You know how people say you never really know your neighbors? I always thought it was just one of those things people say, but let me tell you, I learned the hard way that it's absolutely true. So this all started a few years ago when I moved into a new apartment complex. It wasn't anything fancy, just a basic building with maybe 20 units, decent management, and neighbors who generally kept to themselves. I'd been there a few weeks when I met a guy down the hall named Dave. Dave seemed like a chill dude, maybe a little too friendly at times, but he was always around to help if I needed something, so I thought nothing of it. One evening, I was coming home late from work. I was exhausted and wanted nothing more than to flop onto the couch and zone out in front of the TV. I unlocked my door, went inside, and immediately realized something felt off. Nothing was out of place, but you know that feeling when you just know you're not alone. I tried to shake it off as paranoia, but right then my phone buzzed. It was Dave. He'd never texted me before, so it was weird to see his name pop up out of the blue. The text just said, "How's your night going?" Weird timing, right? I replied with something generic like, "Just got home, pretty tired." He replied with, "You should probably lock your doors tonight." Now I was fully creeped out, wondering if he somehow knew I'd just gotten home or if he was actually watching me. I shook it off as a coincidence and tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. But over the next few days, I noticed something strange. Whenever I left for work or came home, it felt like Dave was always just there. He'd pop out of his apartment or be sitting on the bench in the courtyard, watching me as I came and went. I started to wonder if I was overthinking things, so I tried to ignore it, but that little voice in my head kept saying something was wrong. One night, I was lying in bed, drifting off to sleep, when I heard a faint scratching sound near my front door. My heart started racing. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind, but the sound got louder, almost like someone was picking the lock. I grabbed my phone and texted Dave, asking if he'd heard anything weird, thinking maybe he could go check it out with me or something. He didn't answer right away, but after a few minutes, the scratching stopped. I told myself it was nothing and eventually managed to fall asleep. But when I woke up the next morning, my front door was slightly open. Just a crack, but enough that I knew I hadn't left it that way. That was when I started to really freak out. I mean, who wouldn't, right? I looked around my apartment and didn't see anything missing, but I had this gut feeling that someone had been inside, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was Dave. A couple of days later, things escalated. I came home to find a package at my door. There was no return address, and it just had my first name scrawled across the top. Inside was a small wooden box with an old creepy-looking knife and a note that said, "I could get in any time I want." That was it. No name, no explanation. Just that chilling message. I was about ready to bolt out of there and never come back, but I didn't know what to do. So I went to the building manager and explained everything, from the creepy text to the box and the scratches on my door. To my surprise, she didn't look shocked. In fact, she looked like she already knew exactly who I was talking about. She told me that Dave had been a person of interest to the cops for a while now. Apparently, a few tenants had gone missing over the years, and every time Dave was the last one to see them. She even mentioned that he'd been reported for peeking into windows and leaving gifts for other residents. That was it. I was done. I packed a bag that night, texted a friend to let them know I was coming over, and bolted out of there. But as I walked down the hallway, I saw Dave standing at the end, just staring at me, not moving, just watching. He had this blank look in his eyes, like I was already gone. I forced myself to keep walking, trying to act normal, even though every instinct was screaming at me to run. When I got outside, I called the cops and told them everything. They showed up within minutes, and I watched from a safe distance as they went into the building. I never found out exactly what they found in his apartment, but I did see them escorting him out in handcuffs, looking dazed and unfazed at the same time. It turns out that he'd been keeping souvenirs from each of his guests, and the cops said that if I'd stayed one more night, I'd likely have been his next one. To this day, I still get chills thinking about how close I came. Every time I lock my door, I remember that sick feeling I had in my gut when I realized someone had been in my home. Now, I trust my instincts above all else, and I never ever underestimate the people living right next door.